Hello everybody, my name is Joe Austin and this is Potentials Unleashed, and this is the first program in this series for learning how to program in BASIC, which will cover pretty much most of the concepts that you would find in any language. Uh, Being BASIC is a very simple language to learn, I figured that would be the best place to start for those of you who are new to programming or just want to play around and have some fun. So the first program that we're going to learn is called Guess My Number. Okay, not the most difficult program to do, but I figured that would be a good starting point to get our feet wet. So the programming language that I'm going to use is part of the B4X suite of tools. It has B4J, which is for Windows desktop development. It has B4A for Android development, B4I for iOS development. And I believe there is another one for Arduino. I'm not even sure if I said that right, but so it has different flavors based on the platform that you want to program for. Now, it also has implemented into it a cross-platform way of building a program once and having it run on any of those platforms. There may be some different things you need to program to get it to work on those other ones, but everything is encompassed in this one suite. So it's pretty decent. If anybody is familiar with the old Visual Basic 6 programming languages, that's before the .NET languages took over. This is probably the closest I've ever seen to the Visual Basic 6 programming language. So without further ado, let's get going on Guess My Number. So we're going to open up the B4J. We're going to start with Windows development because I think that most people are using a Windows computer, laptop, whatever you have. I know there's a lot of Mac people out there, and B4I will handle programs in BASIC for that platform. There are some differences, so I'm not sure you can follow exactly along, but this program is pretty simple, so I would imagine it wouldn't be too difficult to implement it. So let's start. So when you first open it up, you get everything's just absolutely blank. There's nothing here. So obviously you want to go to File, you want to go to New, and so this B4X pages, this is for cross-platform programming, which as of right now for this particular program, we're not going to do that. So we're just going to go down to UI, which is user interface, and we're going to choose that option. We're going to give it a name. You want to give it a location to save it to, but you're also going to give it a name. So I'm going to say guess my number. And then I'm going to put a 2 because I already have a guess my number program in there. So this will just be a duplicate essentially, but you have to get the job done. So hit OK. And here's your basic start. As of right now, you can run this right now, hitting the run button or add the F5 shortcut key. Do a little compiling because it actually compiles to Java if you hadn't noticed. And this is its own built-in version of the Hello World program, which you may have seen a billion times in all different languages. I think that's kind of the go-to program to start with, just to make sure that everything is installed correctly, everything's working correctly, and here you go, that is the case. And as far as installing this program and whatnot, I'll put a link to the developer's website in the comments below, and they do have full instructions on installing this suite of programs. You can install them individually, you don't have to do all of them. And I think that the Apple or iOS version of this does actually cost money, but the others are free. So I'm sticking with the B4J to begin with, and we'll move into other ones as time goes on. This is the Guess My Number program, and this is the initial layout, as I had said. So there's a couple things here. This isn't just a code-based interface. There's also a GUI Design, Graphical User Interface, GUI. You can either click the Designer menu option and choose Open Internal Designer, or alternatively, you can hold down your Control key on the keyboard and hover over the actual, what they call layout here, and that will also open the Designer specific to this program. So I'm going to go ahead and click there, and you can see it opens up their GUI Designer, which is actually quite nice and very powerful. You can use your mouse wheel to scroll up and down. You can use these little controls here to move, left, right, up, down. You can hide it if you want, or you can even zoom in. fit, zoom to fit, and things of that nature, which is pretty cool. So right off the bat, you see this button that was automatically installed as part of the program. So if you click on that, you can see that your properties for that button are all over here. The name of it, event name, which is that's what is called when you click the button. So this is the name of the event that fires when you click that button. So that would be a good place. The event would be a good place to put some code to respond when you click the button. And I'm sorry for my fumbling around and whatever. I am kind of doing this. I'm kind of winging it. I don't have a script specifically, and this is really my first set of videos in this environment. So I'm actually still learning this programming language and the whole suite itself. So if I fumble a little bit, I do apologize. I will get better as time goes on. Okay, so there are a bunch of different things you can choose here, but this is a simple program, so I'm not going to do too much with it. I'm actually probably going to, I can either delete this button or I can just rename it and do whatever. If you click off of that, so nothing is selected, you have the actual Windows form that's going to show up, and this is the form title. So we can change the word form to guess number, and that will show up in the title of the window that shows up when you run this program. So we can hit enter there if you want. Now up in here, as you can see, it's a WYSIWYG designer, which is a term often used for web design. It's what you see is what you get, is what WYSIWYG stands for. So basically, whatever you see here is what's going to show up on the screen when you run the program. And the add view is where you're going to add your buttons, canvas, which is for drawing on, checkboxes, choice boxes, color pickers, a whole bunch of different stuff here, which I hope to at some point get to a lot of this. But for this particular program, it's going to be pretty simplistic, and we're not going to have to do a lot of this. So for the sake of getting this going, I'm going to move this button up here. I am going to change the name. And I do have this open on another screen here, so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. Okay. So again, you can name these whatever you want. There are naming conventions for pretty much every language you do. It's nice if you're going to be sharing your programs with other people that need to code as well. So everybody can understand what type of object or variable or array or whatever it is that you're building. If you use the same conventions as everyone else, everybody will understand the code that you. So conventions is different for every language that you use. But for now, I'm just going to use that. This is a button, so I'm going to use the prefix of btn for button. And this is going to be the button that we submit our guess on. So I'm going to call it btn guess. I'm going to hit enter there. It does actually show that new name on the button itself. And then if we were to change the event name, then it would, for right now, it just defaults to whatever the name of the button is. So that will be the event name that fires off when you actually click the button. We don't really need to do a whole lot here, except maybe the text of it says click me. And for my example, I actually have that showing as just the word guess. I'm sorry that I'm looking back and forth here. So guess, hit enter, and then when we run this program, you're going to see the button in the upper left corner. It's going to say the word, it's going to have the word guess on it. So we can actually go back to the original program here and just very simply run it, and there it is. There's the button, and it says guess. Simple stuff so far. So we did change the name of the button. So this click event, this is the event that I was talking about, is actually not going to be called because we changed the name of this button. So I'm actually going to get rid of this sub, delete that, and I'm actually going to get rid of the global. This is where we declare our objects and variables and things of that nature. So I'm going to get rid of that as well. And everything else, no, I think that's good. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back into the designer. And now we have this button here. And if you right click on the button, it's going to bring up some things you can do here. But down here in the generate section, we got a couple things that we can do. That's quite a few things. But all we need to do for this is we need to declare it with this statement here. And again, this one here you could use if you're planning on building a cross-platform program. But for this particular instance, we're not going to do that. So we're just going to do dim button guess as a standard button. Okay, and then we're actually going to click it again and go down here and now choose the click event, which if you noticed up here, the event name is button guess. So when we come down here and hit click, now it just created that. So if we go back to the code, you now see button guess underscore click. So this is the event that's going to fire off when you click that button. All right, so in addition to this button, we also need a text box where we can type in what our guess is going to be. So I'm going to add, then we can go to, where is it? It is text area. And go ahead and move this up here, resize it a bit, a little bit longer. I mean, we don't really have to make it that long because we're not going to be guessing like in the billions or anything. So we're going to call this, and here's the extension that I like to use. It's just txt because it's a text area, and this is the guess. So text guess. So now if somebody comes in here and they look at this naming, they can see that it's text. It's something to do with text. In this case, it's a text field. In addition to that, we need a label. And the reason we're doing a label here instead of another text area is because this is just going to display text. We're not actually going to be able to manipulate it at all. So we're going to put that on there. And for labels, I like to prefix with LBL, label. And then this is the response area. This is where it's going to tell you whether your guess is too high, too low, or if you got it. And we'll do some other messages too in case somebody enters something that's not a number. You want to let them know, or if they put in a number that is outside of the range that you're allowing them to guess in, it will let them know that as well. So we've got those, and then there's one other thing. We do want another button here. I'm going to put that below here, and this is actually going to be hidden. Make that a little bit bigger. Select that, so you can see what I did. And again, btn, because it is a button. And this is what we're going to do, play again. So basically, once somebody guesses the number, it's going to end the game, and then we want them to have the option to play again. And that's what this button is going to do. It's going to start the game over again. It's going to reset all the values that were there. It's going to generate a new random number in between the range that you've given it, and then start the game over again. Now we've got our buttons here. Now we can select everything, right-click, generate dialog. It's going to Now, if we click on just generate dialog, it's going to bring up all of these, and we can expand them individually if we want to. Now, the button guess, we already did a click event, and we already did a dimension, so we don't need to touch that one. So we're going to select this, this, and this. And now, just clicking this button itself is going to dimension, or basically create the object itself, the object reference. And then we have a mouse click event. No, we don't need it on the text because we're not clicking on the text. We're going to click on a button, so we need the click event there. But on the text guess, we're actually going to type in our guess. We are going to do a text changed. So we're going to click on that one, and I'll tell you why as we go along. And then I'm going to click down here and do generate members. So we'll do that. What do you know? It looks like nothing happened, but it did. So we're going to go to the code now. There we go. So now it has created the variables for text guess, which is a text area, for the response label, which is a label, and for the play again button, which is a button. So it kind of does all that for you, which is kind of neat. You can come in here and type this yourself, of course, but having the designer also write a little bit of code for you never hurts. And in addition to that, the play again button has a click event. So this is where we'll put code in if the game ends and somebody clicks the play again button. This is where the code would go. And if the text in the text box changes, then it'll run this code here. So one of the first things we need to do is in the app start, we got to tell it, what are we doing? So I actually am going to create an additional sub. As you can see, these are called subs and end subs. So anytime you call this particular sub, it's going to run any code that's in between these two tags, sub and end sub. But the sub app start that runs everything in here as soon as you run the program. So because we're calling another sub, which we haven't created yet, we're just going to go ahead and write in the name of that sub, and I called it start game. You can see it shows up in red because that sub doesn't exist yet. And you'll also notice over here in the log files, undeclared variable start game, which means we haven't given it a definition yet. It doesn't know what that means. And it even gives you little warnings, which show up in purple. Red shows up that these are game-breaking errors that you got to fix. The purple is basically warnings, letting you know that, hey, there's something up with this. You might want to look at it, blah, blah, blah. Now, it says it hasn't been assigned any value. We know that, and that's okay. We're not worried about that. But this red one, we definitely have to fix. So because we are creating our own sub here, we can put it down the bottom. You can put it anywhere you want, as long not inside of a sub, but let's just put it here. So we're going to do sub space, control V for paste, and then just hit enter and it'll automatically add the end sub. So now start game sub does exist, and now it's no longer an error and it doesn't show up here anymore either. We need something to happen when somebody clicks on these buttons. Now, because a guess can be made from two different ways. It's going to be made from the text that you put into the text field, but there are two ways that you can enter it. You can click the guess button, which will submit your guess that is in the text field, or you can press the enter button while you're in the text field to submit your guess. So because we have two different things calling the same code, we don't want to write the code twice. So what we'll do is we'll create yet another subroutine, and we'll call it submit guess. And I can put that here, submit guess, hit enter. Now it exists, and that error goes away. But we also want to put that in if the text in the text box changes, or basically you press enter, we want it to call this same routine, because it's basically running the same code, and it doesn't make sense to write the same code twice, because then your programs are going to be way longer than they need to be. So we'll only write that code once. Let's start with the start game subroutine. So we're going to come in here, and obviously one of the first things we need to do is we need to select a random number. So to do that, we need a variable that's going to hold that number, and I just call it what you want, but I'm going to do rnum for random number, and it's going to equal random keyword. It needs parentheses, and now you need to give it the range of the numbers that it is looking to do. And you can see it pops up a description here, the minimum value and the maximum value. It returns a random integer between the minimum inclusive, meaning it includes this number, and a maximum number, which it does not include. So if you want to go from 1 to 100, you need to put it in as 1 to 101. It's going to include the 1, but it's not going to include 101, but it will include 100. So now that will assign a random number to that variable rnum. Now we want to keep track of the number of guesses too, so that we can report that once the number has been guessed. So I had done a variable called num guesses. Spell that right? Good enough, I guess. And we're going to set that to 0, because anytime we run this game, or we hit the play again, we want to start off at 0. You've guessed 0 times. So we'll start that, and you'll notice these are in red because we haven't declared them, and we do want them to be declared globally, which means that any of these routines can access those values. So we will do that. Might as well do that now. So I'm going to go up to the global area. This is where you define all of your variables or objects, and because it's in the global section, it's going to be available to this entire program here. So we want to rnum is an integer, so we're going to rnum. We need to declare its scope, so it's private, which means it's only available within this module, which is right here, the main module. It's only available there, and we have to tell it what type of variable it is, and it's an integer. So we're going to hit that, press enter, and we'll do the same thing, private, guesses, yep, and that's also an integer. Okay, so now you can see the red outlines go away because we've now declared them, and now we can move on to the rest of it. So the other thing we want to do is the label that's going to have our responses in there. We want to clear out any messages that might be in there. So we need to start with the name we called it. And like I said, I use LBL for labels. So I know if I type LBL, it's going to pull up anything that shows LBL in there. And these happen to have LBL in there too. But this is what I'm looking for. So if I actually type one more letter, now it only has that one. And I can now hit tab, and it'll pull in that automatically. So LBL response. And since it is a label and it has an attribute called text, I can type in TE or type in the whole thing if I want. But once I get what I'm looking for, and it looks like it's highlighted there, and hit tab, it's going to automatically put that in there. And now I'm going to tell it to give it a blank. Basically, it's going to clear out any text that happens to be in that field. And actually, I did not do that right. What I had done in my other program is I wanted to give it a default value for text and basically telling them what to do. It's kind of an instruction. So guess a number between 1 and 100. And of course you can change this to whatever range that you've given it. Looks like a little space here. Not a big deal, but it's there. And no, I don't want insert, I want end. Enter there. And we need to clear out any other guesses we had in the guess box. So txt guess is highlighted, so hit tab and selects that. And that also has a text field that we're going to clear out. This time we are going to make that double quote, which basically means nothing. So it's going to clear out whatever's in there now. And this will be clear afterwards, but I'm also going to set another property of the guess text box, which is request focus. Request focus. So enter that, and that's it. There are no parameters for that one, so we can leave that as is. The only other thing we need to do in the start game is we want to make the play again button invisible. And the reason for that is while you're in the game, you don't want to click the button and have it reset everything, and then it can choose a different number, and then all your guesses are null or void and nothing matters anymore. So we're only going to make that button visible when you've guessed the number. So we know it's a button, so we're going to do btn, and then we can go down to play again because we know that's the name of the button. And we're going to set the visible attribute to false. Is it visible? No, it's not. So that false means no. So you're turning it off by doing that. All right, and that's pretty much it, for the start game routine. That's going to basically clear off any values that you had previously put in there, and it's going to start fresh.
I'm just going to let you know that I'm going to end this video here and post this one as is, and then I'm going to upload part 2, which will show all the logic behind the Guess My Number game. And as you may have noticed, I do have a new headset with a microphone, so I'm hoping that the noise issues you saw in the first video, well, this entire project, you're not going to see that in my next set of videos. Here's hoping. But anyway, hang on for part 2. Thank you.